Call a real medic. That was the last insult Mara Ellison heard before the soldier's heart stopped. Outside, snow hammered the ambulance bay in Boone Creek, Montana. Inside trauma room, 3 blood streaked the floor, monitors screamed, and 4 elite soldiers watched their teammate turn gray under the lights. The doctors saw a chest wound. Mara saw something worse. Something silent, building pressure inside his body like a loaded weapon. She was only a nurse to them. Quiet, ordinary, easy to dismiss. But some people don't hide because they're weak. They hide because what they know can destroy everything around them. Stay with this story because it's not just about saving one soldier. It's about pride, silence, buried guilt, and the cost of ignoring the one person who sees the truth. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. This story begins now. The story did not begin with the insult in the trauma room. It began years earlier in the silence Mara Ellison built around herself, one careful choice at a time. By the time the snowstorm rolled over Boone Creek that night, most of the town had already gone quiet. Streetlights glowed through curtains of white. Pickup trucks sat buried along the curbs. The old rail yard on the east side gave off a low metallic groan whenever the wind moved through the empty loading bays. Boone Creek, Montana had a way of making people feel smaller than they were. The mountains rose on every side like dark shoulders, and the cold made even simple things feel harder than they needed to be. North Star Regional Medical Center stood on a hill above the town, all glass concrete and pale fluorescent light. From the outside, it looked calm. Inside, it never was. The emergency department worked on controlled noise. Rolling carts, ringing phones, sliding glass doors, rubber soles against polished floors. A nurse calling for respiratory, a resident looking for a vein, a family member praying under his breath near vending machines that hummed like tired insects. Mara knew every sound. She knew the loose wheel on the 3rd trauma cart. She knew the faint delay before the automatic doors opened near the ambulance bay. She knew which monitors alarmed too easily and which nurses pretended not to hear the first call light after midnight. She had learned North Star the way some people learned a language, not because she loved it, because survival required fluency. At 11:16 that night, Mara sat at the nurse's station on the 4th floor with a half-cold cup of coffee beside her left hand and a chart open on the screen in front of her. She wore navy scrubs without embroidery, clean white shoes, and a plain badge clipped squarely to her chest. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, not stylish, not careless. Everything about her suggested restraint. She looked like someone easy to pass in a hallway and forget before the elevator doors closed. That was intentional. A nursing student named Brianna stood beside the med cart, trying to hide the fact that she had been crying in the supply room 10 minutes earlier. Mara had noticed, of course. She noticed most things. The tremor in the girl's fingers, the pinkness around her eyes, the way she kept rereading the same medication order without absorbing it. Mara logged out of her chart. "Brianna," she said. The student startled. "Yes, read the order to me." Brianna swallowed. "Metoprolol 25 milligrams oral once." "And the patient's heart rate?" The girl looked at the screen. 54. "And his pressure?" 98/60. Mara waited. Brianna's cheeks flushed. "I should hold it and call the provider." "Good. I almost gave it. But you didn't." Brianna looked down. "Because you asked." Mara's voice stayed soft. "Because you checked." The girl nodded quickly, grateful and embarrassed. Mara returned to her chart as if nothing significant had happened. That was how she preferred things. No speeches, no applause, no emotional moments in bright hallways. Just one mistake avoided and one patient sleeping safely behind a curtain. Across the desk, a nurse named Elaine watched her over the rim of a paper cup. "You always do that," Elaine said. "Do what catch things before they happen." Mara kept typing. "That's the job. No, most of us catch things after they start making noise. Mara did not answer. Elaine had worked at North Star for 15 years and had the kind of bluntness that came from seeing too many people lie politely. She had been kind to Mara when Mara first arrived, which Mara had appreciated and carefully not encouraged. Kindness invited questions. Questions opened doors. Doors were dangerous. Elaine leaned back in her chair. You know Logan still thinks you should apply for trauma lead. No? That was quick. I'm not interested. You're wasting yourself up here. Mara signed a medication note, then closed the chart. Patients on this floor still need nurses. That is not what I meant. I know. Elaine studied her for a moment. You ever get tired of pretending you're ordinary? Mara turned her head just enough to meet her eyes. Elaine raised both hands. Fine. Forget I asked. Mara looked back at the screen. She did get tired. Not that she would say it out loud. Tired was not the word exactly. Tired sounded like something sleep could fix. Mara had slept enough. She had eaten enough. She paid her bills, kept her house clean, showed up early, charted with precision, and never gave administration a reason to look twice at her. She had built a life out of careful mediocrity. The life had a small house on Alder Street, 5 minutes from the hospital if the roads were clear, 12 if it snowed. It had a kitchen with 2 mugs in the cabinet, though she lived alone. It had a couch that still looked new because she rarely sat on it. It had a locked trunk in the bedroom closet that she had not opened in 14 months and still knew by weight. Inside the trunk was a folded uniform, old field notebooks, a black medical patch, and a photograph of 13 people standing in desert sunlight. She did not need to look at the photograph to remember who was missing from it. At North Star, no one knew the photograph existed. To them, Mara Ellison was simply a nurse who transferred in from out of state 6 years ago with spotless credentials, no social media, no gossip, and no visible ambition. She picked up extra shifts when asked. She never argued about assignments. She never volunteered personal details. If someone asked about family, she said, "Back east." If someone asked where she trained, she named the university on her nursing license and left out everything that mattered after it. Most people accepted the shape of her silence because most people were grateful not to be responsible for another person's truth. Only Logan Pierce kept pressing against it. Logan was the charge nurse on nights, broad-shouldered, neat and rule-bound in the way of a man who believed order was the closest medicine could get to mercy. He was not unkind. He remembered birthdays. He covered for sick staff when schedules broke apart. He carried protein bars in his locker for new nurses who forgot to eat. But Logan trusted systems because systems had rewarded him for trusting them. Mara understood that kind of man. She had worked with versions of him in uniforms in command centers, in tents, and in hospitals. Men who did the right thing as long as the right thing had a policy number attached to it. At 11:31, Logan stepped out of the elevator with a tablet in one hand and a crease between his eyebrows. "Ellison," he said. Mara looked up. "Trauma is short. So is every floor. They need a backup assist. Kessler got pulled into emergency surgery, and the ambulance bay has 2 weather-related crashes inbound." Elaine pointed her coffee cup toward Mara. "She loves trauma. She just hides it." Mara ignored that. "Who is primary Dr. Hale?" That answer hung for half a second longer than it should have. Dr. Victor Hale had been at North Star since before the new wing was built, before the hospital rebranded itself with glass walls and mountain views, before Boone Creek became useful to federal contractors who needed quiet roads and colder skies. He had trained half the emergency physicians in the region. He could place a central line in a moving ambulance and diagnose a ruptured spleen from across a room. He was good. That was never the problem. The problem was that doctor. Hale knew he was good. Mara stood and reached under the desk for her small supply pouch. Logan watched her. "You are trauma assist only. I understand. Dr. Hale runs a tight room. I know. I need you available, not independent. Mara clipped the pouch to her waistband. Those are not the same thing. Logan's expression tightened. Mara. She paused. He lowered his voice. I am not looking for a debate tonight. We have weather short staffing and a full board downstairs. Just help where needed. Understood. He held her gaze a second longer, then nodded toward the elevator. Bay 3. Mara took the stairs. She always took the stairs when she needed to think. The stairwell smelled faintly of salt from Boots' disinfectant and old paint. Her footsteps echoed between concrete walls. With each landing, the hospital changed around her. The fourth floor held the soft, exhausted sounds of ordinary illness. The third floor murmured with telemetry alarms and family members asleep in chairs. The second floor had the stale stillness of administrative offices after hours. The first floor breathed faster. Emergency medicine had a pulse of its own. Mara pushed through the stairwell door and stepped into the corridor outside trauma. A paramedic crew rolled past with an elderly man wrapped in silver thermal blankets. A respiratory therapist jogged the other direction carrying a portable ventilator tube. Somewhere behind a curtain, a child cried with the high, sharp panic of pain that had not yet been explained. Mara entered Trauma Bay 3. The room was not large, but it was efficient. Overhead lights, procedure trays, airway cart, ultrasound unit, blood warmer, chest tube kit in the right lower cabinet, 14-gauge catheters in the second drawer on the left, emergency thoracotomy tray locked behind glass on the west wall. She checked the layout without appearing to check it. Old habit. The resident at the foot of the bed glanced at her. You our assist? Yes. Great. We may have a rollover first. Who is incoming? Before he could answer, the trauma radio crackled at the central desk. The voice came through clipped and strained beneath static. North Star, this is Medic 6. Priority 1 inbound. Military male. Penetrating trauma to upper chest and shoulder. Hemodynamic instability. Details restricted. ETA 6 minutes. The room shifted. Not dramatically. No one gasped. No one froze. But every trained person felt the temperature drop. Military cases were different in Boone Creek. Everyone knew it, even if no one said it. The town sat less than an hour from Raven Ridge Joint Training Complex, a sprawling federal facility hidden beyond state forest roads and old mining land. Officially, it hosted advanced readiness exercises. Unofficially, it brought in men who did not wear names on their uniforms and left town before sunrise. When those men arrived at North Star, they came with injuries that did not belong in any ordinary chart. Dr. Victor Hale entered the bay while pulling gloves from a box. He was tall, silver-haired, clean-shaven, and narrow-eyed in a way that made residents stand straighter. His white coat was gone, replaced by trauma blues. He looked completely at home under fluorescent lights. What do we have? The resident read from the radio note. Male, early 30s. Penetrating trauma left upper chest. Pressure unstable. 2 liters crystalloid in field. Temporary response. Hale reached for the ultrasound probe and glanced at Mara for the first time. Ellison. Doctor. Floor send you? Charge did. His eyes moved over her badge. Fine. Lines supplies recording if needed. Do not crowd the bed. Mara nodded. No one in the room noticed how her left hand had already moved toward the drawer where the chest decompression needles were kept. She moved back to the wall and watched the team prepare. The choreography was familiar. One nurse primed tubing. Another opened a pressure bag. The resident checked suction. A tech tested the monitor leads. Hale stood at the head of the bed, still and commanding, as if the patient had to enter his room before the crisis could officially begin. Outside, sirens approached through the storm. They rose from faint to sharp, then stopped with a wet squeal of tires beneath the ambulance bay awning. The doors blew open at 11:47. Cold air rolled in first, then the stretcher. The patient was huge, pale, and barely conscious. Blood had soaked the left side of his tactical shirt and dried black near the shoulder seam. His face was gray beneath the tan. His mouth opened and closed with fast, shallow breaths that did not match the visible wound. Mara saw that before she heard a single number. 4 men came in with him. They wore civilian outer layers over tactical clothing, no patches, no rank, no unit identifiers. Their boots were muddy, their eyes were not. Each man scanned the room in a different pattern. Entrances, staff hands, equipment, windows, threats. One of them walked beside the patient's head. Master Sergeant Cole Barrett, though Mara did not know his name, yet carried himself like authority, did not need to announce itself. He had a cut along one cheekbone and the clenched jaw of a man trying to keep fear from becoming anger. Another younger and leaner stayed near the back. Owen Keller. His eyes moved differently. Less force, more assessment. He looked at the room the way a person looked at a puzzle that might kill someone if solved too slowly. The paramedic called out as they transferred the patient. Sergeant Caleb Ward, male 32, penetrating wound left upper chest and shoulder region. No exit wound found. Blood pressure, 88/50 in field up to 104 systolic after fluids now trending down. Pulse 130, respirations 32. Oxygen sat 91 on high flow. Hale stepped in. Airway intact. For now, breath sounds diminished left side. Get him on our monitor. Type and cross. CBC, BMP, coags. Portable chest. 2 large bore IVs prep chest tube. The team moved. Mara moved too, but not toward the wound. She stepped to Caleb's right side where she could see his chest rise the line of his throat and the monitor as the leads connected. Caleb's eyes fluttered. He was conscious enough to suffer, not enough to understand. His right hand opened and closed once against the sheet. Cole Barrett leaned close to him. "Stay with me, Ward. You hear me? Stay with me." Caleb tried to answer. Only air came out. Mara watched the hollow at the base of his neck. There. Almost nothing. A slight pull. A subtle shift. Not the dramatic deviation from training diagrams. Not the obvious picture that made students raise their hands and say the answer with confidence. This was earlier. Quieter. More dangerous because the body was still fighting well enough to confuse the room. The portable monitor populated. Heart rate 128. Oxygen saturation 90. Blood pressure 97/60. Mara looked at the left chest, then the right. The wound bled, yes. The upper chest wall had trauma, yes. A hemothorax made sense. But his breathing had the tight, shallow rhythm of pressure building where pressure did not belong. Cole Barrett noticed her watching. His head snapped toward her. "Who are you, Mara Ellison?" "Trauma nurse." His eyes dropped to her badge, then to her empty hands, then back to her face. "We need people who know what they're doing in here." Hale did not intervene. Mara said, "I'm assigned to this room." Cole's voice hardened. "He doesn't need assigned. He needs alive." Mara looked from Cole to Caleb. "Yes." Something in the simplicity of the answer irritated him more than argument would have. Owen Keller watched the exchange from near the equipment rack. His brow tightened not at Mara, but at the way she had answered. As if the cadence had struck some old memory he could not place. The chest X-ray arrived fast. The image appeared on the screen, grainy but readable. Hale leaned in. "Left hemothorax. We are placing a tube." The resident echoed, "Left chest tube." The room accepted the diagnosis because the picture supported it. Mara did not reject the picture. She rejected its completeness. The oxygen dipped to 89. She stepped closer. "Dr. Hale." He was opening the chest tube tray. Yes, I want to flag his respiratory pattern. Diminished sounds left. We know. It's not just diminished. The quality is tight. His pressure is dropping again, and there may be early shift. Hale did not look up. The film shows blood. The film can be true and incomplete. Now he looked at her. For less than a second. Long enough to dismiss the source before weighing the content. We are treating the confirmed finding. Mara kept her voice even. He could have a developing tension component with the hemothorax. The resident glanced between them. Logan Pierce entered just then, drawn by the classified call and the rising pressure in the room. Mara, he said quietly. She did not turn. Hear me out. His oxygen is falling on high flow. His pressure responded to fluids, then dropped again. His breathing does not match blood loss alone. Hale's hands stilled over the tray. Ellison, I appreciate vigilance, but I have the room. Cole Barrett gave a short, bitter laugh from the wall. Are we really arguing with a floor nurse right now? Mara finally looked at him. His grief was wearing anger as armor. She recognized that. It did not make him right, but it made him human. No, she said. You're watching your teammate get worse. The words landed harder than she intended. Cole stepped toward her, but Owen shifted slightly between them without making a scene. Hale's voice cut across the room. Enough! Tube now! Mara stepped back, not because she was convinced, because she knew the shape of rooms where authority felt challenged, pushed too hard too early, and people stopped hearing the patient entirely. They heard only defiance. They heard only threat. She had learned that lesson in other rooms with worse lighting and better weapons. The procedure began. Caleb groaned once low and broken as Hale made the incision. The tube passed. Dark blood rushed into the chamber. The resident exhaled. The tech nodded. Someone said, "Good output." The room eased by a single invisible notch. Confirmation was seductive. People trusted what they could see. Blood in a tube. A problem named. A treatment performed. A room restored to order. Mara watched the monitor. 88. The number blinked, then 87. Caleb's chest rose again, fast and shallow. His right hand stopped moving. Mara felt the old part of herself wake fully. Not memory, not emotion. Function. The cold, clean alignment of observation, pattern, risk, and action. She could smell dust that was not in the room. Hear rotor blades that were not overhead. Feel heat rising through body armor in a place far from Montana snow. She had spent 6 years teaching herself not to become that person. But Caleb Ward had no time for who she wanted to be. Pressure, she said. The tech looked at the cuff. 91/58. Hale adjusted the tube eyes fixed on the drainage. Give it a moment. Mara looked at Caleb's throat. The shift was clearer now. Still subtle. Still deniable. Not to her. Dr. Hale, she said. Logan's voice came from beside her. Mara, he needs decompression. Hale's jaw tightened. We place the tube. It is draining blood. It is not relieving the trapped air fast enough. The tube is in, and he is still dying. The room fell into a thin silence around the alarms. Cole Barrett stared at her as if he hated the fact that part of him wanted to believe her. Owen Keller's eyes had gone sharp. Dr. Hale turned slowly. Ellison stepped away from the bed. Mara did not move. Caleb's oxygen saturation blinked again. 86. The line between obedience and cowardice became very clear. Mara looked at the patient, then at the doctor, then at the tray where the needles were not yet opened. Her voice dropped lower. If we wait until the signs are obvious, we are not diagnosing him. We are documenting his death. Logan reached for her arm. Mara, out of the room. She let him touch her. She did not take her eyes off Caleb. The monitor kept screaming. Mara stood at the edge of Trauma Bay 3 with Logan Pierce's hand closed around her arm. Not hard enough to bruise, hard enough to make a point. Inside the room, Dr. Hale leaned over Caleb Ward, one gloved hand braced near the chest tube, his eyes fixed on the dark blood moving through the collection chamber. He was waiting for the numbers to turn, waiting for the body to obey the treatment. Mara could see the mistake taking shape in real time. Caleb's chest rose in short, uneven pulls. His throat worked with each breath. The muscles above his collarbones tightened, then released, then tightened again. The chest tube was doing what it was supposed to do. It was draining blood. It was not solving the pressure. Pulse Ox 85, the tech called. The room tightened. Dr. Hale looked at the monitor, then back to the tube. Increase flow. Check the seal. Make sure the line isn't kinked. It's clear, the resident said. Then keep bagging him. Mara's pulse slowed. That was how it always happened when the world narrowed. People talked faster. She got quieter. The noise seemed to move away from her as if she had stepped underwater. Her eyes tracked Caleb's airway, his chest, the monitor, the hands around him. He was still alive. But not for long. Logan pulled her another step toward the doorway. Mara, you need to let them work. They are working the wrong problem. His face hardened. You made your concern known. And he is still crashing. You are not the attending. That sentence landed with the dull force of something she had heard too many times in too many forms. You are not in command. You are not cleared for that decision. You are not the person who gets to say what is true. Mara looked at Logan. Then find me the person who is willing to see it. Before he could answer, Caleb's body jerked on the table. His back arched once. The monitor stuttered. The green line became a violent, broken rhythm. Then it collapsed into a flat tone that cut through every voice in the room. No one breathed for 1 second. Then Dr. Hale shouted, "Start compressions." The resident climbed onto the step stool and locked his hands over Caleb's sternum. The first compression drove blood up through the chest tube. A nurse tore open epinephrine. Someone slapped defibrillator pads onto Caleb's skin. Cole Barrett stepped forward, then stopped, his hands curling into fists because there was no enemy in the room he could fight. "Move," Dr. Hale snapped. "Give me space." The trauma bay became motion without direction. Everyone had a task. Everyone had training. Everyone had entered the clean, terrible rhythm of trying to pull a man back from the edge after letting him fall too close to it. Logan released Mara's arm. He did not mean to. His attention snapped to the arrest to the code to the swarm of bodies around Caleb. Mara walked back into the room. No one stopped her. A cardiac arrest rearranged authority. It turned hierarchy into hands. It made rank less important than access. And it made access less important than the person who knew what needed doing. Mara moved to the supply cart, second drawer on the left. She pulled it open and took out a 14-gauge catheter 3 1/4 inches long. Her fingers opened the package before the rest of the room knew what she had chosen. She grabbed antiseptic, a strip of gauze, one empty syringe. Not because she needed all of it to make the decision, but because habits built in worse places did not ask permission to return. Owen Keller appeared at her side. His voice was low. "What are you doing?" "Needle decompression." His eyes flicked toward Caleb. "You are certain?" Mara looked at him. "Yes." One word. No performance. No pleading. No attempt to convince him. Owen stared at her hands. Something shifted in his face. It was not trust, exactly. Trust took time. This was recognition of competence before identity had a name. He saw the way she held the catheter, the way she had already angled her body for access, the way her eyes moved between landmarks without hesitation. He turned slightly. It was a small movement, almost nothing. but it placed his body between Mara and the rest of the room. Cole saw it. Keller. Owen did not turn. "Stand by." "What the hell are you doing?" "Giving her space." Dr. Hale looked up from the head of the bed and saw Mara with the catheter in her hand. His eyes widened. "Ellison, stop." Mara did not stop. The resident kept compressing. The monitor kept its dead tone. Caleb's skin was gray beneath the lights. Mara planted 2 fingers at the top of the left chest and felt for the rib. Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. The teaching point was simple. The body under her hand was not. There was blood swelling muscle motion, the vibration of compressions through the chest wall. She waited half a beat for the compression cycle. Then she drove the needle in. Skin resisted. Muscle resisted. The chest wall gave. Then the air came out. A sharp hiss burst from the catheter, loud enough that even the resident faltered for a fraction of a second. Cole Barrett's head turned. Dr. Hale froze. The sound kept going. Not a whisper. Not imagination. Pressure. Real trapped killing pressure, escaping through the small plastic line in Mara's hand. "Keep compressions," she said. Her voice cut through the silence. The resident restarted hard as if waking from a spell. Mara held the catheter steady, withdrew the needle, secured the line with gauze, and watched Caleb's chest. The left side began to move differently. Not normal, not safe, but less trapped. The monitor tone broke. A ragged electrical rhythm appeared, slow and ugly. "Pulse check," Dr. Hale said, his voice stripped down. The resident stopped. The tech pressed 2 fingers to Caleb's neck. No one moved. The room seemed to lean toward the answer. "I have a pulse," the tech said. Quietly at first, then louder. "I have a pulse." The exhale that passed through the bay was almost physical. Dr. Hale looked at the monitor. "Rate 48, now 52. Pressure still low. 68 systolic. Start norepi. Get respiratory ready. Call surgery. Tell them we are coming now." His voice returned piece by piece, not full command, but enough for the room to move again. Caleb's oxygen saturation blinked back onto the screen. 76, 79, 82. Mara stepped back. Her hands stayed steady until she lowered them. Only then did she feel the fine tremor start in the muscles of her forearms. She flexed her fingers once and reached for a clean dressing. The sleeve of her scrub top had ridden up above her right elbow. She did not notice at first. Owen did. He went still. On the inside of Mara's forearm, dark ink sat against pale skin. Old ink. Faded at the edges, but unmistakable. A black dagger wrapped by a medical serpent framed by the small shield of a special operations medical instructor, cadre. Owen's face changed. Not surprise. Shock had more noise in it. This was the silence of a man seeing a ghost step out of an ordinary room. He whispered black dagger. Cole turned sharply. What Owen did not answer him. He looked at Mara with a different kind of attention, now stripped of doubt. Mara caught his stare and pulled the sleeve down. Too late. Cole stepped closer. "Keller." "What does that mean?" Owen's voice was almost flat. "It means she is not who we thought she was." Mara stripped off her gloves and tossed them in the biohazard bin. Dr. Hale was still looking at her. For the first time that night, he was not dismissing her. He was measuring the distance between what he had assumed and what had happened because of it. Mara met his eyes. "He needs thoracic surgery. The decompression will not hold him. You have minutes." The statement gave him a place to put his hands, a task, a way out of the frozen moment. He turned to the room. "Move, now. Or team on standby. Tell them left chest hemothorax with tension component post. Arrest return of spontaneous circulation after needle decompression." His mouth tightened on the last words, but he said them. The team moved Caleb out with the sudden purpose of people trying to outrun their own mistake. The stretcher wheels rattled, blood bags swung. A respiratory therapist squeezed the bag with both hands. The monitor rolled beside them, still fragile, still alive. Cole followed the stretcher halfway, then stopped. His eyes came back to Mara. The trauma bay emptied around them until only a few remained. Used packaging lay across the floor. A bloody sheet hung half off the table. The chest tube tray sat open, shining under the lights. The smell of antiseptic and blood lingered in the air. Cole stood with his arms at his sides. All the aggression that had carried him into the room had nowhere to go now. "You saved him," he said. Mara picked up a discarded wrapper and dropped it into the trash. The team stabilized him. "That is not what happened." She turned toward the sink. "Go with your man." Owen stepped forward. "Ellison." The name sounded different in his mouth now. Mara did not stop washing her hands. "I went through Raven medical selection 4 years ago," he said. "Second winter cycle." The water ran over Mara's fingers. "We heard stories about an instructor named Ellison. People called her Saint Knife." Cole looked from Owen to Mara. "You know her?" "No," Owen said. "But I know what that tattoo means." Mara shut off the water. Owen continued quieter. "They said she could do a cricothyrotomy in the dark with 1 red lens and 2 broken fingers. They said she failed candidates for missing small signs because small signs got people killed." Mara reached for a paper towel. "Stories grow teeth when soldiers repeat them. You washed 3 men out in 1 day because they missed a compensating patient. They missed a dying patient." Owen's throat moved. "That was you." Mara looked at him then. Really looked. His face was older than the men she remembered training, but the posture was the same. Young operators always stood like they were daring the world to test them. The good ones learned to listen before the world accepted. "I trained a lot of people," she said. "Why are you here?" That question cut closer than he knew. Mara dried her hands, folded the towel once, and dropped it into the bin. "I work here." "No," Owen said. "You hide here." Cole's eyes narrowed. "Careful." Mara looked at Cole. "That advice is late." For a moment, none of them spoke. Then the trauma bay doors opened and Logan Pierce came in. He looked at the empty room, then at Mara, then at the catheter packaging on the tray. His face held too many emotions to settle on one. Relief, anger, fear, professional dread. "Mara," he said. She nodded once, as if they had both expected this moment. Logan looked toward Cole and Owen. "You need to go to surgery waiting." Cole did not move. She saved Ward. Logan's jaw worked. "I know." "Then whatever you are about to say to her, say it knowing that." "I do." Cole stared at him for another second, then turned and left through the double doors. Owen remained half a breath longer. "Mara," he said. She did not answer. His voice softened. "Thank you." Then he followed Cole out. The doors swung closed behind them. The room felt larger without the soldiers in it. Logan rubbed a hand over his mouth. "You performed an invasive procedure after the attending ordered you out." "Yes." "You did it during an active code." "Yes." "You were right." Mara said nothing. He looked almost angry that she would not make this easier for him. "He would have died," she said. Logan looked at the floor. "I know." "Then say that first." His eyes lifted. Mara held his gaze. "Say it first before the policy, before the report, before whatever sentence you have already started writing in your head." The muscles in his face tightened. Finally he said, "He would have died." The words sat between them. Then he added, And I still have to report it. Mara nodded. There it is. This is not personal. It never is when the system speaks through someone else. Logan took that without flinching, which was one of the reasons she had never disliked him. Dr. Hale will report it too. He should. You could be suspended. I know. Your license could be reviewed. I know. Mara, why did you not tell anyone who you were? The question was not accusation now. It was confusion, maybe hurt. The kind people felt when they realized a person beside them had been carrying an entire life in silence. Mara looked around the trauma bay, at the blood on the floor, at the open drawer, at the monitor still displaying Caleb's last rhythm before transport, because people make different mistakes when they think you are impressive. Logan stared at her. She continued, I needed ordinary mistakes. That does not make sense. It does to me. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Whatever you did before North Star, whatever unit you were with, that matters now. No, Caleb matters now. He is in surgery. You are here. And this hospital is going to ask questions. Mara walked past him toward the door. Then they can start with why nobody listened before he arrested. Logan caught up with her in the corridor. Mara. She stopped. He looked tired in the fluorescent light, older than he had upstairs. The adrenaline had left him, and now only responsibility remained. Go clean up, finish any active charts. Then go home. 9 tomorrow morning, conference room B. Administrative. Yes. Risk management. Yes. Hale. Yes. She nodded. Logan hesitated. What? His voice dropped. How did you know? She could have told him about blast injuries and field assessments, about bodies that compensated until they did not, about the way young fit men died differently than textbooks promised, about the first time she had seen a tension chest build under armor while two people argued about evacuation priority. Instead, she said, his body told us. Logan waited. Mara gave him nothing more. She turned and walked toward the staff restroom. Inside, she locked the door. The room was small, too bright, and smelled faintly of bleach and hand soap. Mara gripped the edge of the sink and looked at herself in the mirror. Navy scrubs, plain badge, hair still tied back. A faint smear of blood across one cheek she did not remember getting. She turned on the water and washed it away. Her face looked the same after. That almost bothered her more. Her heart had not started racing until it was over. Now it beat hard against her ribs, delayed and useless. The body always collected its debts when the work stopped. She breathed through it. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 6 counts out. Not because she needed calming techniques from a wellness seminar, but because panic was just physiology with a loud voice, and physiology could be managed. She looked down at her forearm. The tattoo showed beneath the wet edge of her sleeve. For 6 years it had stayed hidden under fabric, under routine, under the careful costume of a woman who wanted no one to ask why a nurse in Montana carried a mark from a world most people never saw. She pulled the sleeve down. The fabric stuck to damp skin. At 2:08 in the morning, Mara returned to the 4th floor and finished her charts. No shortcuts, no vague language, no emotional phrasing. The medication holds the wound, checks the patient education. The late call to the physician for a fever, all documented cleanly. Her notes had always been armor. Accurate, timed, difficult to twist. Elaine watched her from the desk. You okay? Mara typed another sentence. Yes. That is a lie. It is also not your problem. Elaine's expression softened. That has never stopped me before. Mara paused, then looked at her. I need to finish this. Elaine nodded. No more questions. That kindness landed harder than the questions would have. Mara clocked out at 2:41. The hospital was quieter then, but not asleep. Hospitals never slept. They only lowered their voices. She passed the closed gift shop, the chapel, with one lamp burning inside the vending machines, the security desk where a guard scrolled through his phone beneath a camera feed. No one really watched. Outside, the snow had thinned into powder. The parking garage smelled of wet concrete and exhaust. Mara's old Subaru sat on the third level beneath a flickering light. She unlocked it, got in, and shut the door. For a moment, she did not start the engine. She sat in the dark with both hands resting on the steering wheel and let the night settle around her. Caleb Ward was alive when they took him to surgery. That was the only fact that mattered. It was not the only fact that would cost her. Her phone buzzed once in her coat pocket. Mara looked at the screen. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Then another buzz. A text appeared. "We know who you are. We need to talk before they reach you first. Colonel Elise Ramsey." Mara stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Across the garage behind the windshield of a dark government sedan, Owen Keller held his own phone to his ear. His voice was quiet. "Yes, ma'am. It is her." He watched Mara's Subaru roll down the ramp and disappear into the snow. Then he said, "Ellison is alive and she just saved one of ours." Mara did not answer the message. She read it once, then again, then locked the screen and placed the phone face down on the passenger seat as if darkness could make the words less real. "We know who you are." The sentence did not frighten her in the way it might have frightened someone else. Mara had lived too long with classified doors, sealed files, and names spoken only inside controlled rooms. Being known was not the dangerous part. Being found at the wrong time was. She started the Subaru and drove out of the parking garage into the thinning snow. Boone Creek lay below the hospital in cold strips of light. Empty intersections blinked red. Plows crawled along the main road with orange lights rotating through the storm. A 24-hour gas station glowed beside the highway, bright and lonely, its windows fogged from the warmth inside. Mara drove past it without stopping. Her house on Alder Street waited in a row of small homes built for miners and railroad families decades before the hospital became the town's biggest employer. The porch light was on because she always left it on when she worked nights. The walkway had gathered a clean skin of snow. No footprints. She sat in the driveway with the engine running and studied the windows. Kitchen dark, bedroom dark, curtains still. No vehicle idling nearby. No figure under the trees. Still, she did not get out right away. Old habits moved through her like a checklist. Watch the mirror. Count the parked cars. Look for exhaust. Look for stillness where there should be motion, and motion where there should be stillness. Nothing. The phone buzzed again. Same number. Mara picked it up. A second message waited beneath the first. "Do not speak to hospital administration alone. Do not accept legal help from anyone connected to North Star or Raven Ridge. Call me when you are clear." Mara stared at the word clear. She had not used that word in that way for 6 years. Inside the house, the heat clicked on. A pipe knocked somewhere in the wall. Small domestic sounds. A civilian life trying to convince her it was real. She went in through the side door, locking it behind her before turning on the kitchen light. The room was clean because she kept it that way. One cup in the sink, one towel folded beside the stove, a stack of mail arranged by date on the counter. Nothing out of place. That should have comforted her. Instead, it made the room feel staged. Mara removed her shoes, set them on the mat, and washed her hands, though there was nothing left on them. Soap. Hot water. 30 seconds. Dry with paper towel. Dispose. Repeat in her mind. The body remembered blood even when the skin was clean. She opened the cabinet above the refrigerator and took down a small metal box. Inside were documents, cash, an old passport, and a phone sealed in plastic. She did not turn the phone on. She only checked that it was there. Then she went to the bedroom. The closet door slid open with a soft scrape. Behind winter coats and spare blankets sat the locked black trunk she had avoided for over a year. Mara stood in front of it for a long moment. She did not open it. Not yet. At 4:03 in the morning, she sat at her kitchen table with Colonel Elise Ramsey's number glowing on the screen. She pressed call. The woman answered on the first ring. Ellison. Colonel Ramsey. You are home? Yes. Anyone follow you? No. You sound certain. I am certain enough. A brief pause. Mara could hear faint movement behind Ramsey, the muted rhythm of a room that was awake and working. Sergeant Ward is out of surgery, Ramsey said. Critical but stable. The surgeon says your decompression gave him the window he needed. Mara closed her eyes for 1 second. Good. That is all you have to say. That is the only part I needed. Ramsey's voice softened by a fraction, not enough to become gentle. There is more. There always is. The injury that brought Ward into North Star tonight was not reported through normal training channels. His unit was told it was a range accident. The preliminary wound description from the contractor medical staff does not match what your hospital documented. Mara opened her eyes. Contractor medical staff? Yes. Raven Ridge? Yes. Mara looked toward the dark window over the sink. In the glass, her reflection looked pale and still. Who holds the medical contract? That is why I contacted you. Ramsey exhaled once through her nose. Argentum, Medical Systems. The name landed with no meaning at first. Then the old professional part of Mara began arranging possibilities around it. Private contractor. Military training. Classified site. Injured operator. Civilian hospital. Conflicting records. Medical Director Miles Corvin. Mara was silent. Ramsey noticed. You know the name. I know a Dr. Victor Hale. Miles Corvin is his brother. Outside, the wind pushed snow against the kitchen window in soft bursts. Mara watched it gather on the sill. Ramsey continued. Ward is the third operator connected to Raven Ridge who has been treated at North Star in 7 weeks. The first 2 were logged as minor training injuries. Both reports were cleared by Argentum. Both were signed by Corvin. Both were routed through your hospital with no follow-up. Mara thought of a young man in a hallway 6 weeks earlier. Dark hair, taped ribs, eyes bright with pain he was trying to laugh off. Rafe Donovan. The official note had said fall from obstacle structure. The bruising had said compression from something heavier, narrower, and more deliberate. I saw one of them, Mara said. I know. Mara's hand tightened around the phone. How? Because he finally talked. The kitchen seemed colder. Mara. I need to meet you in person. Not at your house, not at the hospital. There is a diner on Highway 191 called the Blue Kettle. Be there at 8:30. Sit where you can see both doors. Mara almost smiled. You read my file. I read several. Then you know I do not like being handled. I know you dislike being surprised more. That was true enough that Mara did not argue. At 8:30, the Blue Kettle was half full of truckers, county workers, and 2 old men arguing quietly over a newspaper. The windows were fogged around the edges. The coffee smelled burned. A waitress with silver hair moved between tables with the steady endurance of someone who had carried bad news in breakfast plates for 30 years. Mara arrived 12 minutes early and took the back booth. Colonel Elise Ramsey arrived exactly on time, which meant she had arrived early and watched first. She was in civilian clothes, dark coat, wool cap, no visible weapon, no visible rank. Still, the room made space around her. Some people carried command like a uniform they could not take off. Ramsey slid into the booth across from Mara. For a moment, neither spoke. The waitress came by. Coffee. Yes, Ramsey said. Mara nodded. When the cups arrived, Ramsey wrapped both hands around hers and looked directly at Mara. I am going to speak plainly. Good. Argentum Medical Systems is falsifying injury classifications at Raven Ridge. Mara did not touch her coffee. Prove it. Not yet. Then you suspect it. I suspect it with enough supporting evidence that a federal team is being assembled. Mara leaned back. That is not the same thing. No. Which is why people like you matter. The phrase, people like you, carried weight. Mara did not let it show. Ramsey reached inside her coat and placed a folded sheet of paper on the table, handwritten. No letterhead, no digital trail. Mara opened it. 3 names: Caleb Ward, Raphael Donovan, Peter Sloan. Beside each name a date, an injury, and an official cause. Ward, penetrating chest trauma. Range simulation accident. Donovan, rib fracture and soft tissue injury. Fall from obstacle platform. Sloan, shoulder dislocation and concussion. Vehicle drill impact. Mara read the list twice. Then she said Donovan did not fall. Ramsey's eyes stayed on her. What did you see compression pattern across the lower ribs? Not vertical impact, no abrasions consistent with a platform fall. He had bruising from a controlled force applied from the lateral side. Did you document that? No. Why not? Mara looked at her. Ramsey nodded once. Because the chart already had a mechanism, and the structure above you had no appetite for contradiction. I told him to request a second opinion. He did not. No. He says he was afraid of being pulled from his team. He was. The waitress passed with a coffee pot. Neither woman moved. Ramsey tapped the paper once. Ward's injuries were worse. Too visible. Too difficult to bury inside a clean note. If he had died last night, Argentum could have called it an unfortunate complication after civilian hospital care. Mara's jaw tightened, and North Star would have carried the liability. Yes. And Dr. Hale. We do not know what he knew. He missed the tension chest. Missing it and intending it are different. They are. Ramsey studied her. You are being careful. I am being accurate. That is why I need your statement. Mara folded the paper and set it down. You need my medical observations. I need those. I also need your history. No. Ramsey did not blink. Mara. No. The moment you testify, your credibility becomes the target. They will ask why a former special operations medical instructor disappeared into a civilian hospital under a low profile. They will ask why you left. They will ask about Marcus Weller. The name entered the booth like a blade slid between ribs. Mara's expression did not change. Her coffee sat untouched. Ramsey's voice lowered. I am not your enemy. That is not a credential. No, it is a statement of intent. Intent does not keep people alive. No, but information does. Mara looked toward the window. Snow slid from the diner awning in a white sheet. On the highway beyond, a logging truck passed with chains rattling against the tires. Marcus Weller had been 24 years old. He had been fast stubborn and too quiet after the 3rd day of the course. Mara had noticed that. She had checked him, cleared him to continue. 12 hours later, he collapsed during a stress evolution and never woke up. The formal investigation found an undetected cardiac condition. The formal investigation cleared her. The formal investigation gave everyone language they could survive. Mara had not survived it, not in the way that mattered. She looked back at Ramsey. I left because a candidate died under my watch. I read the finding. Then you know I was cleared. I know the paper cleared you. Mara's mouth tightened. Ramsey continued. Do you believe the paper? For a moment, the diner noise seemed too loud. Forks against plates, coffee pouring, men laughing in low voices near the counter. Life continuing with rude innocence. Mara said, I believe he died. Ramsey accepted that answer because it was the only honest one available. Then she said, Rafe Donovan told me you were the only person at North Star who seemed to know his injury report was wrong. He said you looked scared when you warned him. I was angry. He said scared. People confuse them when women are quiet. A faint flicker touched Ramsey's face. It might have been approval. Before she could answer, Mara's phone vibrated on the table. Unknown number. Mara looked at Ramsey. Ramsey looked at the phone. Answer it, Ramsey said. Mara did, Miss Ellison, a male voice said. Smooth, polished, careful. My name is Elliot Vance. I represent Argentum Medical Systems. Mara held Ramsey's eyes. Why are you calling me? We understand you were involved in a difficult event at North Star Regional last night. We also understand you may be facing administrative complications as a result. Mara said nothing. Vance continued. Argentum has a strong interest in supporting medical professionals placed in complicated circumstances. We may be able to provide legal assistance, financial protection during any license review, and a formal statement recognizing last night as a team-based clinical success rather than an individual violation. The offer was too precise. It touched every exposed nerve from the last 8 hours. License, money, reputation, blame. Mara asked, what would you want in return? Only that you allow the formal internal processes to proceed without unnecessary outside involvement. Outside involvement. Military inquiries can distort clinical facts. Mara watched Ramsey's face harden without moving. Vance's voice remained warm. We are trying to protect you. No, Mara said. You are trying to price me. The line went quiet for half a breath. Miss Ellison, situations like this can develop in unpredictable ways. They usually do when people lie. She ended the call. Ramsey reached for her own phone. When did that number call you now? They moved faster than I expected. They knew about the suspension. Yes. Before I did, maybe. Ramsey was already typing. Do not go home. Mara looked toward the window again. The highway, the snow, the ordinary morning. What happened? Rafe Donovan's apartment was searched before dawn. Nothing taken. Everything moved. A message, not a burglary. Mara stood. Ramsey continued. And someone accessed your home address through North Star HR at 9:47 this morning. Mara's house appeared in her mind. The clean kitchen, the locked trunk, the porch light. The life she had assembled piece by piece because small, ordinary things could be controlled. She asked, who accessed it? We are working on that. That means you do not know. It means we know enough to move you. Ramsey wrote an address on a napkin, then slid it across the table. Old Copper District, Building 12. Rear entrance. Do not use GPS. Do not call from your phone unless necessary. Keller will meet you there. Mara memorized the address and left the napkin on the table. Ramsey picked it up and tore it into pieces. Mara walked out into the cold. She did not run. Running told watchers something had changed. She crossed the parking lot, got into the Subaru, and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, the blue kettle sat under the gray sky like any other roadside diner. Colonel Ramsey remained inside one hand near her coffee eyes, following Mara through the glass. Mara drove north, then turned west, then doubled back through side streets lined with warehouses and chain-link fences. Boone Creek's old copper district had once fed the town. Now it held storage units, machine shops, and buildings with broken windows covered in plywood. Snow softened the decay but did not hide it. She parked 2 blocks away from Building 12 and walked. The rear entrance opened before she knocked. Owen Keller stood inside wearing jeans, boots, and a dark jacket. Without the hospital lights and tactical posture, he looked younger, more tired. You were followed? No. He stepped aside. Ramsey said you would say that. Mara entered. The safe house was bare and practical. Folding table, 4 chairs, a whiteboard, 2 laptops, medical kit on the floor. Coffee no one had time to drink. Rafe Donovan sat at the table with a brace on his left wrist and fresh fear in his eyes. He stood when he saw her. "You were right," he said. Mara closed the door behind her. "About your ribs. About all of it." On the whiteboard, names and lines formed a shape Mara understood too quickly. Argentum Medical Systems, Miles Corvin, Victor Hale, Elliot Vance, Raven Ridge Injury Reports, North Star Intake Records. Her own name sat near the bottom, circled once. Mara stared at it. Owen saw her looking. "You became part of it when you saved Ward." "No," Mara said. "I became part of it when I warned Rafe." Rafe looked down. "I should have listened. You are listening now." Before he could answer, Owen's phone rang. He checked the screen, then put it on speaker. "Tanner." A young male voice came through, breathless and strained. "Rafe, we've got a problem out here. Reyes went down during the load circuit. He's barely answering me. The medic vehicle is gone, and Dr. Corvin isn't responding." Mara was already moving toward the medical kit. Her voice entered the call, clean and sharp. "Tanner, this is Mara Ellison. Tell me exactly how he is breathing." The safe house went still around her. Rafe stood beside the table with one hand braced on the edge, his face drained of color. Owen Keller held the phone flat between them. Speaker opened, his eyes fixed on Mara, as if the whole room had narrowed to her voice. Outside the warehouse walls, Boone Creek's old copper district sat under snow and rust, quiet enough that the faint hum of the laptop sounded too loud. On the other end of the call, Corporal Tanner Wade breathed hard into the phone. "Fast," he said. "Shallow. Like he can't get a full breath." "Is he awake?" "Barely. He knows my name, but he keeps fading. Skin color. Bad. Lips look blue. He's sweating through his shirt." Mara crouched beside the medical kit and opened it with one pull. Gauze airway adjuncts. Pressure dressings. IV supplies. Fluids. Emergency medication. Pack. Pulse oximeter. Compact monitor. Trauma. Shears gloves. Good kit. Not a hospital. Not enough for comfort. Enough to matter. Any bleeding, no. Any chest wound, no. Nothing like Ward. The name moved through the room without anyone saying more. Mara glanced at Rafe. "What were they doing before he went down?" Rafe leaned toward the phone. "Tanner, talk to her. Every detail." Tanner swallowed hard. It came through the speaker like static. "We were on the load circuit. Weighted packs, hill sprint, drag dummy, wall climb. Reyes complained his chest felt tight after the second climb. I told him to slow down. He said he was fine. Then he got dizzy, went to one knee, then he just dropped." Mara pulled gloves on. "Did anyone give him medication today?" Silence. It lasted just a second, but Mara felt it sharpen. "Tanner, Dr. Corvin gave us both a shot this morning." Rafe closed his eyes. Owen looked toward the whiteboard. Mara kept her voice steady. "What did he say it was? Routine pre-exercise immunization. Said it was cleared through the medical schedule. Have you received that kind of injection before a circuit?" "Not before a circuit. Not like this." "Same vial for both of you, I think so." He drew both from the same small bottle. "How long ago?" "Maybe 4 hours. How do you feel?" "I'm fine." "Tanner." A pause. "My chest is tight, too. A little. I thought it was the cold." Mara looked up at Owen. His hand was already on his own phone. "Call Ramsey," she said. Owen stepped away, voice low and fast. Mara returned to Tanner. "Sit down now. I can still help Reyes. You help him by staying conscious. Sit down beside him and keep the phone close." There was rustling snow, crunching a low groan from another man. "Okay," Tanner said. "I'm sitting. Put Reyes on his side. Keep his airway clear. Do not let him roll onto his back if he vomits. Tell me if his breathing changes." "I did that already. He's on his left side." "Good. You are doing well." The words were not comfort. They were a handrail. Tanner's breathing steadied a fraction. Owen returned phone pressed to his ear. "Ramsey is moving. She says Corvin left Raven Ridge 20 minutes ago with the contractor medical vehicle. Facility coordinator cannot reach him." Rafe's voice went low. "He left them out there." "No," Mara said. He gave them something first. The room absorbed that. From the speaker, Tanner said, "What does that mean?" Mara did not lie. Lies wasted time when fear already knew the truth. "It means I need you to listen closely and answer exactly." "Yes, ma'am." "Check Reyes's eyes. Are his pupils large, normal, or small?" A pause, the sound of movement. Tanner breathing harder. "Small. Real small. Is he drooling or swallowing more than normal?" "Yeah." "He keeps swallowing. Any twitching in his face or hands? His fingers are moving, like tremors." Mara reached into the emergency medication pack and checked the labels. Her hands moved quickly but not wildly. Every item touched once. Every pocket searched with intent. Owen watched her face. "What are you thinking, cholinergic pattern? Could be organophosphate exposure. Could be another agent mimicking it. Either way, if Tanner is symptomatic too, both need immediate intervention and evacuation." Rafe pushed away from the table. "I know the back route." Owen looked at him. "You are on limited duty. I can point at roads with one good hand." Mara closed the kit. "Then point fast." Owen grabbed keys from the table. "Ramsey says military police are 20 minutes behind us." "We do not have 20 minutes," Mara said. Rafe was already at the door. The three of them moved into the cold. The vehicle waiting outside was an unmarked dark SUV with snow crusted along the wheel wells. Owen took the wheel. Rafe climbed into the passenger seat. Mara got in back with the medical kit across her knees, and Tanner's call still open on Owen's phone, now connected through the vehicle speaker. The engine turned over hard, then caught. Owen pulled away from the warehouse without headlights for the first stretch, then switched them on as they turned onto a service road. Boone Creek fell behind them in blocks of amber light and frozen streets. Mara leaned forward between the seats. "Tanner, I need a breathing count on Reyes. Watch his chest for 15 seconds and count each rise." The line rustled. 10. 40 a minute, Mara said quietly. Owen heard it and pressed harder on the gas. The SUV cut through the industrial district, then onto a 2-lane road that ran north between dark pines. Snow blew in thin sheets across the pavement. The headlights caught it in silver flashes. Rafe pointed ahead. "Stay left after the bridge. Highway looks faster, but it curves around the ridge. This road cuts behind the old quarry." Owen took the turn. The tires slipped, caught, then straightened. Mara opened the compact monitor and checked its battery. She laid out supplies in the order she might need them, each item secured between her knees and the kit wall so they would not scatter if the SUV jolted. Her breathing stayed calm. Her mind did not. It moved through branches of possibility, discarding the unlikely, holding the dangerous. Cyanosis, secretions, small pupils, sweating, tremors, altered mental status, delayed onset after injection. 2 operators exposed. Contractor medic gone. Federal inquiry imminent. Not an accident. Not illness. Not training. Tanner's voice came through again, thinner. "Ma'am Reyes says his vision is blurry. Can he squeeze your hand? He's trying. It's weak. How are you feeling?" I'm okay. Tanner. His answer broke slightly. My hands are shaking. Mara looked out the window into the dark trees. Put yourself flat on the ground. Not standing. Not kneeling. Flat. Keep your head turned to the side. Stay next to Reyes, but do not try to carry him. If somebody comes... Owen's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Mara answered. You tell me before you move. The road narrowed as they climbed. Boone Creek's lights vanished behind the ridge. The world became black pine snow and engine noise. Rafe spoke without turning. There's an outer gate with contractor access. Main gate will log us. Back fence has a maintenance road. You used it? Owen asked. Everyone used it. Range staff smoked out there because the cameras were broken. Owen glanced at him. We're broken? Rafe grimaced. 3 weeks ago. Mara kept her eyes on the kit. Good enough. The first gate appeared 6 minutes later, half hidden by fir trees and a sagging sign that read, Raven Ridge Environmental Access. Owen killed the headlights before the bend and rolled forward in darkness. The chain was locked. Rafe was out before the vehicle fully stopped. He crossed to the fence line, kicked snow away from the base, and found a secondary latch hidden behind brush. Maintenance lock, he said. Combination was never changed. Owen joined him. You are telling me a classified training facility used the same combination for contractor maintenance? Rafe spun the numbers with his good hand. I am telling you contractors are lazy when they think no one cares. The lock clicked. They pushed through. Owen drove with lights low along a rutted track that seemed less like a road than a memory of one. Branches scraped the sides of the SUV. Snow slapped the windshield. Somewhere far off, a tower light pulsed red through the storm. Tanner came back on panic rising. Ma'am Reyes is making a weird sound. Mara leaned closer. Describe it. Wet. Like he's choking. Turn his head more to the side. Clear his mouth with cloth if you can see fluid. Do not put your fingers deep in his mouth. There was movement, a strained grunt Tanner talking to Reyes under his breath. Okay. He coughed. He's still breathing. You are doing well. Stay with my voice. Owen's jaw tightened. 3 minutes. Rafe pointed through the windshield. Training lane is past that tree break. There's a drainage ditch, then a mock village. The SUV broke out of the trees into a wide, open training corridor. Raven Ridge looked abandoned and hostile under snow. Concrete walls rose from the ground with empty window cutouts. Steel obstacles stood like gallows. A tower watched over the valley. No floodlights, no medics, no moving personnel. Only a faint green chem light waving near a ditch. Owen stopped hard. Mara grabbed the kit and was out before the vehicle rocked back. Cold hit her face like water. Tanner sat in the snow beside Reyes, one hand gripping the phone, the other pressed to his own chest. He looked younger than his voice. 23, maybe. His helmet was gone. Snow had collected in his hair. Reyes lay curled on his side, breathing fast and shallow sweat shining on his face despite the cold. His skin had a bluish cast around the lips. His eyelids fluttered. Mara dropped to her knees beside him. Tanner moved back 2 feet. Stay sitting. Yes, ma'am. She placed 2 fingers against Reyes's neck, pulse present. Not racing the way trauma would, too controlled for the severity of his distress. That mattered. She checked pupils. Pinpoint, secretions at the mouth, muscle fasciculations in the hand. Rafe knelt beside Tanner. You with me? Tanner nodded, but his eyes were unfocused. Mara looked at Owen, both exposed. Reyes first, Tanner close behind. Owen scanned the tree line with a pistol low at his side. Mara did not comment on the weapon. It belonged to his world. The airway belonged to hers. She worked quickly opening the emergency medication case and selecting what she needed. She administered treatment without ceremony, then supported Reyes's airway and placed the compact monitor sensor on his finger. The first reading flickered uncertain in the cold. 78, then 80. Still bad, but not gone. "Tanner," she said, "look at me." He tried. His pupils were smaller now. "How tight is your chest? Feels like someone's sitting on it." "Any nausea?" He nodded once. "Rafe, keep him seated. If he gets more confused, lay him on his side." Rafe nodded. His face was pale, but his hands were steady. A radio crackled from Owen's vest. Ramsey's voice came through. "Keller status." Owen answered without taking his eyes off the ridge. "We have both operators. Suspected toxic exposure. Ellison treating. Need evacuation and containment. Corvin absent. Military police are 7 minutes out. Medevac staging at the South Pad. Facility coordinator reports no scheduled injection, no authorized immunization, no documented medical activity this morning." Mara looked up. "Ask about medical waste," she said. Owen relayed it. Ramsey's answer came after a short pause. "Coordinator says Corvin cleared the med room himself before leaving." "Of course he did," Rafe muttered. Mara secured Reyes for movement. His breathing remained fast, but the wet choking quality was easing. His pulse held. His eyes fluttered open halfway. "Reyes," Mara said, "can you hear me?" His mouth moved. No sound. "Do not try to talk. Blink if you understand." He blinked once. "Good." Tanner made a small sound behind her. Rafe lowered him carefully into the snow. "Mara." She shifted to Tanner. He was sweating now, jaw-tight fingers twitching against his pants. She treated him, next catching the progression before it took him as deep as Reyes. His fear made him fight the first breath. Then he heard Mara's voice and followed it. "In through your nose if you can. Slow, again. Stay with me." Tanner's eyes locked on hers. "You are not dying on this field," she said. He gave a weak nod. Owen's voice cut in. "Vehicle." Everyone went still except Mara, who kept one hand on Tanner's shoulder and the other checking his pulse. Headlights moved along the ridge road. One set. Then another. Not the South Pad. Not Ramsey's route. The vehicles descended without sirens. Black contractor SUVs lights off until the last turn, then high beams flooding the ditch in hard white glare. Owen raised his weapon. Rafe shifted in front of Tanner, useless wrist brace and all. Mara stayed where she was. The first SUV stopped 20 yards away. 3 men stepped out in dark jackets marked with Argentum Medical Systems. Not medical staff. Security. The kind of security that looked like former military and moved like men who missed the clarity of having legal cover for force. The lead man walked forward with both hands visible and a smile that belonged in a deposition. "This is a restricted contractor medical scene," he said. "Step away from the patients." Owen answered. "They are United States military personnel under active federal inquiry. They are participants in a contracted training evolution and remain under Argentum medical supervision." Mara looked up from Tanner. "Your medical supervision left them in the snow." The man's eyes moved to her. "You must be Nurse Ellison." Rafe swore under his breath. Mara's face stayed calm. "You know my name. That saves time. You are interfering with patient transport. You brought an ambulance." His smile thinned. The second contractor moved toward Reyes with a folded stretcher. Owen stepped into his path. "Stop." The man stopped, but only barely. The lead contractor sighed. "Sergeant Keller, you do not want this to become an obstruction issue." Owen's voice dropped. "Take another step, and the issue changes." Mara felt Tanner's pulse flutter under her fingers. No time. No room for men measuring authority over bodies that were still fighting to survive. She looked at the lead contractor. What did Corvin give them? He blinked once. There it was. Not surprised that she asked. Surprised that she knew where to aim. I have no information about any medication administration. That is a very lawyered sentence for a man standing in the snow. His jaw flexed. Behind him, one of the contractors spoke quietly into a radio. Owen saw it. So you did call someone. The lead contractor lifted one hand. We are trying to keep this contained. Mara stood slowly. Snow clung to her knees. Her gloves were wet. Her sleeve had pulled back again, the old tattoo visible against her forearm. Contained is what you do with infection, she said, not witnesses. The man looked at the tattoo. Recognition did not reach his eyes, but calculation did. Before he could speak, red and blue lights strobed through the trees behind him. Not local police. Military police. 2 vehicles came fast over the ridge road and boxed the contractor SUVs in place. A 3rd vehicle followed, then a field ambulance with its rear doors already open. Colonel Elise Ramsey stepped out into the snow. She wore body armor now. The civilian coat was gone. Her voice carried across the training lane. Hands visible. No one moves patients except my medical team. The contractor lead turned. Colonel Argentum has contractual authority over medical management at this facility. Ramsey walked past him as if he were furniture. Not anymore. She knelt beside Reyes, then looked at Mara. Status. Both exposed to an unknown cholinergic agent or analog. Reyes severe responding. Tanner moderate caught earlier. Need evacuation monitoring and blood work. Preserve clothing if possible. Treat this as evidence. Ramsey nodded once to the medics. You heard her. The field medics moved in. Mara gave a concise handoff. No drama, no wasted words. Times, symptoms, progression, treatment given, response. Unknown agent, suspected injection site. One medic looked at her with quick recognition, the professional kind. You coming with them? Mara glanced at Ramsey. Ramsey answered for her. Yes. Mara almost objected. Then Tanner reached for her sleeve with trembling fingers. Please. So Mara climbed into the ambulance. The ride to the south pad was rough and fast. Reyes lay strapped to the cot oxygen mask, fogging with each breath. Tanner sat belted on the side bench, pale but alert. One hand curled tight in the blanket around his shoulders. Mara sat between them, watching both. Outside the training facility rolled past in flashes. Concrete walls, range towers, steel doors, men with weapons, snow turning red and blue under emergency lights. Tanner looked at her. You really a nurse? Mara checked Reyes's monitor. Yes. That all? She looked at him, even weak. He tried to smile. That was a no. Reyes made a faint sound through the mask. It might have been a laugh trying to survive. Mara let the corner of her mouth move. Save your oxygen. At the south pad, a medical helicopter waited with rotors turning slow against the storm. Ramsey stood near the landing lights, speaking into a secure phone. Owen was beside her, snow on his shoulders, eyes scanning everywhere. As the medics transferred, Reyes and Tanner Ramsey walked to Mara. Facility med room is locked. Corvin's access code was used 40 minutes before he left. Security feed for that corridor is missing. Convenient. We are opening it now. Mara looked toward the main compound. Then open it with witnesses. Ramsey studied her. You want to be there? I need to be there. You are not part of the search team. No. I am the person who knows what he would not think to hide. Ramsey held her gaze for one long second, then turned. With me. The medical shed sat behind the main training building, a low concrete structure with a keypad door and no windows. Military police had already secured the entrance. A facility coordinator stood nearby, looking like a man who had just realized his signature had been on too many forms he had never read closely enough. The door opened with a hydraulic hiss. The room inside was too clean. Mara saw it immediately. Not sterile. Cleaned. Shelves aligned. Counters wiped. Waste bins empty. Refrigerator closed. Logbook on the desk placed square with the edge. Someone had staged absence. Ramsey stepped in behind her. "Tell me what you see." "Too much order." Mara crossed to the waste area. Empty sharps container. Replacement seal too fresh. No used gauze. No wrappers. No trace of a morning injection. She opened drawers. Standard supplies. Nothing out of place. That was the problem. Doctors in active field support did not leave no mess. Real medicine created debris. Packaging. Tape ends. Cap covers. Alcohol pads. A room used for injections on 2 operators should have had evidence unless someone cared enough to erase it. Mara turned slowly. Her eyes moved to the refrigerator. "Open that." A military police investigator broke the seal and opened the door. Inside were labeled vaccines, fluids, temperature logs, and sealed medication boxes. Mara crouched. The front row looked perfect. She removed 2 boxes, then a third. Behind them, tucked against the back wall, was a small metal transport case. Ramsey's face hardened. The investigator photographed it before touching it. Then he lifted it out and opened it on the counter. Inside were 3 unlabeled vials, 2 empty slots, and a folded sheet of temperature-sensitive packing material. Mara did not touch anything. There were 5. Ramsey leaned in. 2 used, or removed. The coordinator stammered, "That is not in our inventory." "No," Mara said. "That is why it was behind the inventory." A second investigator called from the desk. "Colonel." He had opened the lower file drawer. It was nearly empty except for a stack of folders pushed against the back. Ramsey pulled on gloves and lifted them out. No names on the tabs, only coded identifiers. Mara saw one and stopped breathing for half a second. MW214. The room receded. Snow outside. Voices. Radios. All of it moved far away. Ramsey noticed. Mara. Mara reached for the folder, then stopped before touching it. "Open it." Ramsey did. The top page was an old physiological baseline from a special operations medical candidate. Resting cardiac readings, stress markers, metabolic response, hydration index, sleep deprivation tolerance. Candidate Marcus Weller, 24 years old. Date of death 6 years prior. Mara stared at the paper. The next sheet was not part of the official file, she remembered. It listed a pharmacological stress enhancer under a trial code. Administered during controlled selection evolution. Observation status incomplete. Adverse cardiac response. Field collapse. Ramsey read silently, her face changing by degrees. Mara's voice came out flat. He was given something. Ramsey did not answer. Mara turned the page. There was a summary note. Not for investigators. For internal review. Candidate presented with acute cardiovascular failure during exertion phase. External attribution to undetected pre-existing condition remains viable. Instructor medical response within acceptable parameters. Recommend closure through standard command medical process. Mara looked at the last sentence until the words stopped looking like words. Instructor medical response within acceptable parameters. They had written her innocence into the cover story because it helped bury the crime. For 6 years she had carried Marcus Weller's death as a failure she could not prove and could not put down. The proof had been sitting in a contractor file behind a refrigerator in Montana. Owen entered the doorway behind Ramsey. He saw Mara's face and stopped. "What is it?" No one answered. Mara closed the folder with slow care. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were not. Ramsey spoke softly. "This changes jurisdiction." Mara looked at her. This changes everything. A radio call came through from outside. Colonel Ramsey. We have Corvin. Security team intercepted him at a private airfield east of the facility. He had 2 encrypted drives and a transport cooler. Ramsey's face went cold. Bring him here. Mara stepped away from the counter. Owen moved closer. Mara. She looked at him. The concern in his eyes almost undid her. Not because it was intimate, because it was undeserved and human, and she had protected herself for years by keeping both at distance. I left because of him, she said. Weller. She nodded. I thought I missed it. Owen's jaw tightened. You changed the course after he died. Mara blinked. What? They told us the winter class got new screening protocols because someone finally had the courage to force them through. Mandatory observation window, extra cardiac markers, removal authority for medical instructors if a candidate looked wrong even when command wanted them pushed. Mara looked down at the folder. I did not know they kept those. They kept them. We hated them. His voice roughened. Then one guy in my class flagged on day 3. He was furious when they pulled him. Turned out he had myocarditis after a virus. He could have died on the mountain. Mara swallowed once. Owen said, You saved him and never met him. Outside, engines approached. The moment folded away before Mara could answer. Military police brought Dr. Miles Corvin through the snow with his hands restrained in front of him. He was in his late 40s, lean, handsome in the sterile way of men who had learned to appear calm in photographs. His hair was dark with gray at the temples. His jacket was expensive. His shoes were wrong for the snow. He looked first at Ramsey, then at Mara. Recognition sparked. Not from North Star, not from the news of the night. Older. Ellison, he said. Mara stepped into the doorway. You remember me? Corvin's mouth curved faintly. You were difficult to forget. Ramsey moved beside her. Dr. Corvin, you are being held pending federal investigation into unlawful medical experimentation, falsification of records, and reckless endangerment of military personnel. Corvin gave a small, humorless laugh. Those men volunteered for extreme performance environments. They did not volunteer to be drugged without informed consent, Ramsey said. He looked at Mara. You always were sentimental about candidates. Mara walked closer until only a few feet separated them. Snow fell between the open door and the dark behind him. Marcus Weller was not a candidate to you. Corvin's eyes sharpened. He was data. For the first time, the controlled mask slipped. Not much. Enough. Mara felt a cold fury settle in her chest. It was clean. Easier than grief. Safer than guilt. He had a mother, she said. He had a brother who sent him letters. He hated peaches. He ran with his left hand half closed when he was tired. He was not data. Corvin said nothing. Mara raised her forearm slightly. The black dagger tattoo showed beneath the damp sleeve. You built your work on bodies you thought no one would hear. Her voice stayed quiet. I heard them. Ramsey gave a signal. The military police moved Corvin toward the vehicle. As he passed, he leaned just enough for Mara to hear. You think this ends with me? Mara looked at him without blinking. No, that was not fear. It was assessment. The helicopter lifted from the south pad with Reyes and Tanner aboard. Its lights rose into the dark and vanished into the storm toward North Star. Corvin was driven away in the opposite direction, flanked by military police. Investigators sealed the medical shed. The contractor security team sat disarmed in their vehicles, no longer smiling. Near the training lane, dawn began to dull the eastern sky. Mara stood alone beside the ditch where Reyes had gone down. The snow still held the marks of knees, boots, stretcher legs, and struggle. Her gloves were stained. Her scrub pants were soaked through at the knees. She had not slept. She had not eaten. She could still hear Tanner's frightened breathing through the phone. Owen came to stand beside her. For a while, neither spoke. Then he said, "Ward is asking for you." Mara looked at him. He woke up briefly, enough to ask who stuck a needle in his chest. Despite everything, Mara almost smiled. "What did you tell him?" Owen looked out over the training field. "I told him the real medic was in the room." Mara closed her eyes. The words should have hurt. Instead, they landed somewhere tired and waiting. She opened Marcus Weller's folder again. The copied pages sat inside a sealed evidence sleeve now, but Ramsey had allowed her to read the summary once more before it disappeared into the federal chain. Marcus had not died because she failed to see him. He died because men with authority had turned his body into a test and her grief into camouflage. That truth did not heal the wound. It changed its shape. Rafe walked toward them from the command vehicle, his brace dark with melted snow. "Tanner and Reyes are airborne," he said. "Ramsey says both are stable enough for transport." "Good," Mara said. Rafe looked at the field, then at her. "I should have listened when you warned me. You were trying to survive your own chain of command. So were you." Mara did not answer. The three of them stood in the pale morning while Raven Ridge filled with investigators, medics, soldiers, and the slow machinery of accountability arriving late. Mara had spent 6 years hiding from a ghost. Now the ghost had a file number, a signature trail, and a man in custody. It should have made the air easier to breathe. It did not. But when Owen handed her a field jacket from the SUV, she took it. When Rafe offered coffee from a paper cup gone lukewarm, she drank it. When Ramsey called her back toward the medical shed for a formal statement, Mara walked toward the door without lowering her eyes. Inside the room was still too clean, but not clean enough anymore. By mid-morning, Raven Ridge had changed shape. The training complex no longer looked like a place built for secrecy. It looked like a crime scene that had run out of shadows. Military police stood at every gate. Federal investigators moved through the medical shed in blue gloves and silent pairs. Evidence bags lined the folding tables. Laptops were photographed before they were opened. Cabinets were sealed. Refrigerators were logged. Every vial, every syringe cap, every handwritten note became part of a story that men like Miles Corvin had spent years trying to keep unfinished. Mara sat on the rear step of a field ambulance with a blanket over her shoulders and an untouched cup of coffee between her hands. The cold had gotten into her bones, but she barely felt it. Across the yard, Colonel Elise Ramsey stood near the command vehicle speaking into a secure phone. Her posture had not loosened since dawn. She listened more than she spoke. Every few minutes her eyes moved toward the medical shed, then toward Mara, as if confirming that both were still there. Owen Keller leaned against the front of the ambulance arms, folded one boot planted against the tire. His face carried the exhaustion of a man who had been awake too long and had not yet earned permission to sit down. Rafe Donovan sat inside the ambulance with his injured wrist braced on his knee. He watched the medical shed doors as if expecting something worse to walk out. No one talked much. There were moments when language insulted the size of what had happened. Mara looked at the steam rising from the coffee. It had already started to thin. Her gloves were off now. Her fingers were red from the cold. On her right forearm, the old tattoo showed beneath the edge of the blanket. She did not cover it. A medic approached from the command tent boots, crunching through the snow. Ellis and Mara looked up. "Sergeant Ward is awake again. North Star Surgical ICU. Colonel Ramsey said you should hear the update directly." Mara set the coffee down. Status. The medic checked the tablet in his hand. Post-operative. Chest tube in place. Blood pressure supported but improving. Oxygenation stable. Thoracic says prognosis is guarded but positive. The word positive did not soften her face, but it entered her like warmth. and Reyes en route to North Star, responding to treatment. Tanner, too, both conscious during transfer. Rafe closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the ambulance wall. Owen exhaled through his nose. Mara nodded once. Good. The medic hesitated. He asked who saved him. Ward. Yes. Mara looked toward the mountains beyond the fence. Snow clouds dragged low over the black ridge. What did they tell him? The medic glanced at Owen. Owen said, "The truth." Mara almost asked which truth, but she was too tired to split it apart. Colonel Ramsey ended her call and crossed the yard toward them. She carried a folder in one hand. Not the Marcus Weller file. Another one. Thicker. Newer. "Mara," she said. Mara stood the blanket sliding from one shoulder. Ramsey looked at the medic. "Give us a minute." He left. Ramsey opened the folder and removed a printed page sealed in a clear sleeve. This came off one of Corvin's drives. "We have not decrypted everything, but the first pass gave us enough." Mara looked at the page. Names, dates, trial codes, physiological response notes, injury classifications before and after revision. Caleb Ward was there, Rafe Donovan, Peter Sloan, Reyes Alvarez, Tanner Wade. More names followed, more than Mara expected, more than anyone had said out loud. Owen stepped closer, his face hardening as he read over her shoulder. Rafe got down from the ambulance slowly. How many Ramsey did not dress the answer. 17 confirmed subjects tied to unauthorized performance studies. 5 serious adverse events. 1 historic fatality already linked by file code to Marcus Weller. There may be others. The yard seemed to go quiet around the number. 17. Mara stared at the list until the names blurred. Men reduced to response markers. Breathing difficulty, cardiac irregularity, loss of consciousness, soft tissue trauma, recovery adequate, report adjusted, report adjusted. That phrase appeared again and again, neat and bloodless. She looked at Ramsey. Who signed the adjustments? Corvin signed most. Some were countersigned by Argentum executives. A few North Star intake summaries were accessed and edited after the fact. By Victor Hale. Ramsey's mouth tightened. We do not know yet. His credentials were used twice. That does not mean he used them. Owen's voice was low. It does not mean he did not. No, Ramsey said. It does not. Mara handed the page back. Ramsey did not take it at once. You need to prepare yourself. Argentum's legal team is going to move fast. They will claim Corvin acted outside corporate authorization. They will attack chain of custody. They will attack memory. They will attack you. Mara looked at the evidence sleeve between them. Let them. Ramsey studied her. You are not the same woman I met at the diner. Mara's eyes moved to the medical shed. No, I am the same woman. I just ran out of places to hide. By late afternoon, Mara returned to North Star Regional in the back of a military vehicle. She had left the hospital hours earlier without a badge under suspension as a liability to be contained. She came back through the ambulance bay beside a colonel, 2 investigators, and a chain of evidence that had already begun to reach into the hospital walls. The automatic doors opened. Warm air hit her face. Disinfectant, coffee, floor polish, fear. Hospitals always smelled different after something had gone wrong inside them. A security guard near the desk saw her and straightened. His hand moved toward the phone, then stopped when he noticed Ramsey's uniform and the federal credentials behind her. Mara did not look at him. She looked toward Trauma Bay 3. The room had been cleaned. Of course it had. New sheets, mopped floor, restocked drawers, no trace of Caleb's blood, no trace of the hiss that had brought him back. Clean rooms lied with the best intentions. Logan Pierce stepped out from behind the central desk. He looked as though he had aged a year since morning. His hair was still neat, his badge still straight. but his eyes were red and the crease between his brows had become permanent. "Mara," he said. "Logan." He glanced at Ramsey. "Colonel." Ramsey did not waste time. "We need access to electronic records tied to Raven Ridge patients, including audit trails for chart edits, intake notes, risk management attachments, and credential access logs." Logan swallowed. "Risk management is waiting upstairs. I am not asking risk management." The words were not loud. They did not need to be. Logan nodded. "I can get IT. Now." He turned, then stopped and looked back at Mara. "They brought Caleb out of sedation for a few minutes. He asked for you." Mara's chest tightened. "Is he stable enough for a short visit?" Ramsey looked at her. "Go. We can begin without you." Mara almost refused. Work first. Statement first. Evidence first. That was the old reflex. Keep moving so nothing catches you. Then she thought of Caleb on the table, gray and silent, his life balanced on a plastic catheter and a room full of pride. She walked toward the surgical ICU. The unit was quieter than the emergency department. Different machines, different fear. The fear here lingered. It sat with families in chairs and collected in the corners of rooms where people waited for numbers to improve. Caleb Ward lay in bed 7 with tubes, lines, dressings, and a chest drain beside him. His color was better, though exhaustion had carved deep shadows under his eyes. Cole Barrett stood near the window with his arms crossed. His clothes had changed. His face had not. It still carried the look of a man who had nearly lost someone and did not know where to put the leftover terror. When Mara entered, Cole turned. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then he stepped aside. No apology. Not yet. But space. That was a start. Caleb's eyes opened halfway. His voice came rough through a dry throat. "You the nurse?" Mara came to the side of the bed. "Yes." He breathed carefully as if each inhale had to negotiate with pain. "They said you stabbed me. With purpose." A faint sound left him. It might have been a laugh. It became a wince. "Hurts to laugh. Then do not." His eyes moved to her forearm. The tattoo was visible now. He saw it. Understood enough. "Keller says I was dead. For a short time. Feels longer." Mara checked the monitor because looking at numbers was easier than looking at gratitude. Caleb whispered, "Thank you." She nodded. That should have been enough, but Caleb kept his eyes on her. "I heard what Barrett said to you." Behind her, Cole shifted. "Mara said he was scared." Cole's jaw tightened. "That does not excuse it." Mara turned to him. He looked at the floor, then back at her. "I was wrong." The sentence came out rough, dragged over pride and shame. "I saw scrubs and a badge and decided what you were worth in a room where my brother was dying." Caleb's eyes closed briefly at the word brother. Cole continued, "I asked for a real medic." Mara waited. Cole met her eyes. One was standing in front of me. Mara did not smile. The moment was too honest for that. "I need you to remember something she said." Cole nodded. "The next time the quietest person in the room says the patient is getting worse, listen before you decide who they are." Cole absorbed it like an order. "Yes, ma'am?" Caleb whispered. "She sounds like command." Mara looked down at him. "You sound like a patient who needs to sleep." His mouth twitched. She turned to leave, but Caleb lifted 2 fingers weakly from the sheet. "Mara." She stopped. "Whatever they are saying, you did wrong. I am alive because you did it." The words followed her back into the hallway. Conference room B had changed too. That morning it had been a disciplinary room. By evening it was an investigation room. Paula Wynn from Risk Management sat at the far end with a legal pad she had stopped writing on. The hospital's chief medical officer, Dr. Anika Rhodes, stood near the wall, arms folded tightly. Logan sat beside IT, who had 3 screens open and the pale expression of a man discovering that audit trails were not as boring as he had hoped. Victor Hale sat alone on one side of the table. He looked up when Mara entered. For the first time since she had known him, he did not look like the owner of the room. Ramsey stood at the head of the table. "Dr. Hale, she said your credentials accessed 2 Raven Ridge patient charts after discharge. In both cases, mechanism of injury language was modified to align with contractor incident reports." Hale stared at the screen. "I did not make those edits. Who had access to your login?" "No one should have. That is not an answer." His face colored. "My brother had privileges for consult coordination during the Raven Ridge contract transition. Temporary access. I signed off on it." Paula closed her eyes. Dr. Rhodes turned slowly. "Victor." Hale's voice became quieter. He said it would streamline records. "Contractor cases were creating delays. I thought it was administrative." Mara watched him. Hale looked at her then, and whatever defense he had prepared seemed to leave him. "I did not know he was changing records." Mara believed him. That did not absolve him. "You did not want to know why he needed access," she said. Hale flinched. No one rescued him from it. He looked back at the table. "No." Ramsey placed another page in front of him. "This is your incident report from last night. The first version states that Nurse Ellison performed an unauthorized intervention during a chaotic resuscitation. The revised version submitted later states her intervention was clinically indicated and directly preceded return of circulation. Why did you change it?" Hale looked at the report. "Because the first version was cowardice." The room was silent. He continued, voice strained but steady. "I was angry. Embarrassed. I told myself the report had to focus on scope and process. Then I watched the surgery team wheel Sergeant Ward out alive, and I knew exactly what had happened. She saw what I missed. I dismissed her. He arrested. She saved him." Mara felt Logan look at her, but she kept her eyes on Hale. Ramsey said, "Did anyone pressure you to suspend Nurse Ellison?" Paula spoke quickly. The suspension was standard procedure under the circumstances. Ramsey did not look away from Hale. Hale's hands folded together on the table. Paula recommended it. I agreed. A man named Dennis Lark from our insurance liaison office was present. I thought he was attached to the carrier. Ramsey's eyes sharpened. "Dennis Lark works for Argentum's legal investigators." Paula's pen slipped from her fingers. Dr. Rhodes whispered, "Jesus." Mara remembered the gray suit in the corner, the calm eyes, the practiced stillness. Hale's face changed as the trap became visible behind him. He was in the room before she was suspended. "Yes," Ramsey said. He was. Paula reached for her phone. Ramsey's hand stopped her with one look. "No calls leave this room until federal counsel arrives." The hospital seemed to hold its breath around them. By midnight, the first public version of the truth had begun moving through official channels. Not the whole truth. That would take months, maybe years. Investigations did not walk at the speed of damage. They walked at the speed of proof. But enough became clear. Argentum Medical Systems had used classified training environments to conduct unauthorized performance stress studies on operators and candidates. Medical events had been mislabeled. Injury mechanisms had been altered. Civilian hospital records had been manipulated through temporary access, stolen credentials, and administrative negligence. A dead candidate named Marcus Weller had been misclassified 6 years earlier to protect a program that should never have existed. Mara gave her statement in a small room near administration with a recorder on the table and Ramsey seated beside the investigator. She spoke for 94 minutes. She described Caleb's presentation, the chest tube, the falling oxygen, the subtle shift, the refusal, the arrest, the decompression. She described Rafe's rib injuries from 6 weeks earlier. She described Reyes and Tanner in the snow. Then came Marcus. The investigator asked the question gently. Did you believe before today that you bore responsibility for candidate Weller's death? Mara looked at the recorder. Yes. Do you believe that now? The answer did not come quickly. Ramsey did not help her. No one could. Mara folded her hands in her lap and felt the years inside them. The training field, the collapse, the investigation, the cleared finding that had not cleared anything, the resignation letter, the move to Montana, the Navy scrubs, the quiet life, the ordinary face. Finally, she said, I believe I was made to carry responsibility that belonged to men who hid behind authority. The investigator nodded. Mara continued, I also believe grief does not leave just because evidence arrives. The room stayed silent for a moment. Then the investigator said, Thank you. When Mara stepped into the hallway, Owen was waiting with 2 paper cups of coffee. He handed one to her. This one is terrible too, he said. She took it. Consistency matters. He leaned against the wall beside her. For a few minutes they drank in silence. Then Owen said, Ramsey is pushing to keep you protected until Argentum's network is fully rolled up. I have a house. You had a house. Mara glanced at him. He shrugged. Ramsey's words. Mara looked down the corridor toward the elevators. My go bag is still there. Military police cleared the house. They recovered it. No forced entry, but someone had been on the property. She processed that without visible reaction. Owen watched her. You do that a lot. What turned fear into logistics? Mara took another sip of burned coffee. It is cleaner that way. It is not always healthier. She looked at him. He lifted one hand. I know. Not my lane. For the first time that day, Mara almost smiled. 2 weeks passed before North Star held the formal nursing board review. The room was not dramatic. That almost made it worse. Beige walls, long table, pitchers of water, microphones that hummed faintly, people in suits using polite voices to discuss moments that had been anything but polite. Mara sat with legal counsel provided through the federal witness protection process, though she had argued she did not need it. Ramsey sat 2 rows behind her in uniform. Owen was there. Rafe, too. Cole Barrett stood against the back wall because he disliked chairs when he was angry. Caleb Ward appeared by video from a rehabilitation unit thinner but awake with a blanket over his lap, and a stubbornness in his face that made Mara think he would ignore half his recovery instructions. The board chair reviewed the issue. Scope of practice, emergency exception, physician objection, clinical deterioration, patient outcome. Mara listened without expression. Then Victor Hale testified. He wore a dark suit that fit badly as if he had chosen it for punishment. He did not protect himself. He stated clearly that Mara had identified a developing tension physiology before the arrest. He stated that he dismissed her concern. He stated that her intervention restored circulation when standard resuscitation had not. He stated that the room failed the patient before Mara broke the rule. When asked whether he believed she had acted recklessly, he said no. She acted when I did not. The words moved through the room like a door opening. Caleb testified last. The board chair asked him what he remembered. Caleb's smile was faint and tired. Not much. Pain, noise, Barrett yelling, then nothing. And after I woke up with tubes everywhere and a soldier I trust telling me the person who saved me had been punished for it. The chair adjusted her glasses. Sergeant Ward, this board is not here to punish appropriate emergency care. We are here to determine whether professional boundaries were violated. Caleb looked directly into the camera. Ma'am, I respect boundaries. I have lived my life inside them. But from where I was lying, the boundary was on the wrong side of my pulse. No one spoke for several seconds. The decision came 40 minutes later. Mara's license would remain active. The board acknowledged that her action occurred in an extraordinary emergency after repeated clinical warnings and immediately following cardiac arrest. North Star was required to submit revised escalation procedures for situations in which bedside staff identified rapid deterioration that conflicted with the attending physician's working diagnosis. It was not a victory with music. It was a document, a vote, a set of conditions, and a quiet line in an official record that said she had not been wrong. Outside the hearing room, Logan Pierce waited near the elevators. He looked nervous, which did not suit him. Mara. She stopped. He held out her North Star badge. The plastic rectangle looked smaller than she remembered. Dr. Rhodes reinstated you this morning. Full standing, back pay, public correction pending legal review. Mara looked at the badge but did not take it. Logan's hand lowered slightly. I owe you an apology. You did your job. I hid behind my job. The hallway noise thinned around them. Logan continued. I heard you. I did. Maybe not enough to understand, but enough to know you were seeing something. I chose order because order felt safer than conflict. Mara looked at him for a long moment. Order is not safe when it teaches people to ignore deterioration. He nodded. I know that now. Mara took the badge. Her thumb passed over her name. Mara Ellison, R.N. The letters were the same. The weight was not. She clipped it to her coat. 3 months later, North Star's trauma bay had a new protocol posted beside every code cart. Clinical Red Review. Any licensed clinician, nurse, physician, respiratory therapist, medic, or advanced trainee could call it during active deterioration. The attending physician had to stop, reassess, and respond directly to the concern out loud. The recorder had to document the challenge and the response. Retaliation for appropriate escalation was grounds for disciplinary action. Some doctors hated it. Some nurses distrusted it. That meant it was probably aimed at the right wound. Mara returned to work part-time at first. The first night back, she stood outside Trauma Bay 3 for almost a minute before entering. The room was stocked. The drawers were arranged. The second drawer on the left still held the large catheters. She opened it, checked, closed it. Elaine found her there. You planning to fight the furniture? Mara turned. Only if it starts first. Elaine smiled, then her eyes softened. Good to have you back. Mara nodded. Elaine touched her arm, once brief and kind, then walked away before kindness became a conversation. Later that night, a resident missed a subtle blood pressure trend in a septic patient. Brianna, no longer crying in supply rooms, called a clinical red review with a voice that shook only once. The room stopped. The attending listened. The patient got antibiotics, fluids, pressors, and an ICU bed before the crash. Mara watched from the doorway. No one applauded. No one needed to. In late spring, Mara flew to Virginia with Marcus Weller's corrected file and a sealed envelope inside her bag. The cemetery sat beneath a wide, pale sky. Grass had begun to green at the edges. Rows of white stones held names, dates, wars, and silences too large for stone. Marcus's mother met Mara near the gate. She was smaller than Mara remembered from the funeral, or maybe grief had made everyone seem larger then. Her hair was white now. Her hands trembled when she accepted the envelope. I knew they did not tell me everything, she said. Mara's throat tightened. I am sorry. Mrs. Weller looked at the file, then at Mara. Were you with him? Yes. Was he alone? No. The older woman closed her eyes. For a moment, that was all the answer she needed. They walked to Marcus's grave together. Mara stood while his mother knelt and touched the top of the stone. He wrote about you, Mrs. Weller said. Mara looked at her. Said you scared the life out of him. Said you could tell when someone lied about pain. A fragile smile crossed her face. He said he trusted you. Mara could not speak. Mrs. Weller stood and placed a hand against Mara's cheek with a tenderness Mara did not know how to receive. Then do not spend the rest of your life punishing the person he trusted. The wind moved across the cemetery, lifting the edge of the envelope. Mara closed her eyes. The grief did not leave, but something inside it unclenched. By summer, Raven Ridge reopened under federal oversight. Argentum Medical Systems no longer existed under that name. Its executives were scattered across indictments, plea negotiations, sealed statements, and public denials that sounded thinner every week. Miles Corvin awaited trial. Victor Hale resigned from his leadership role at North Star and remained under review, though his cooperation spared him the worst suspicion. He returned to clinical work under supervision and, according to Logan, became unbearable in a new direction. He listened to every nurse so hard they started avoiding eye contact. Mara heard that and said nothing, but she kept the message Logan sent her with the first successful clinical red review under Hale's shift. Not because she forgave everything, because change was evidence too. Colonel Ramsey offered Mara the position on a Thursday afternoon in a plain conference room at Raven Ridge. No ceremony, no recruitment speech. A folder slid across a table. Civilian Director of Medical Integrity, Classified Training Oversight. Authority to audit contractor medical systems. Authority to suspend training for medical safety concerns. Direct reporting line outside contractor and local command structures. Mara read the title twice. This is not a nursing job. No, Ramsey said. It is not military. No, it puts a target on my back. Yes. Mara looked up. Ramsey did not soften it. You know what happens when medical authority depends on rank contracts or convenience. You know what gets missed. You know how bodies tell the truth before paperwork does. Mara closed the folder. You want me back inside the machine. Ramsey leaned forward. I want you where the machine has to hear you. Outside the conference room window, young candidates ran a trail under the morning sun. They moved in pairs, packs bouncing breath visible even in summer chill at elevation. Instructors watched them. Medics watched the instructors. New rules, new eyes, old risks. Mara saw one candidate slow near the far fence. A medic stepped toward him immediately. No hesitation, no waiting for collapse. She looked back at Ramsey. When do I start? The first class Mara addressed was smaller than the ones she remembered from her old life. 24 candidates, 12 instructors, 6 medical staff, 1 federal observer pretending not to observe too obviously. The auditorium smelled of floor wax coffee and nervous sweat. Mara stood at the front in dark pants, boots, and a gray shirt with no rank on it. Her tattoo was visible. She had chosen short sleeves on purpose. No hiding. Owen stood near the back wall, arms crossed, face unreadable. Rafe sat beside him, still on restricted duty, but grinning like he had no intention of following it forever. Caleb Ward was not there. He was still recovering, but he had sent a note that Mara had folded in her pocket. Make them listen before someone has to bring them back. Mara picked up a marker and wrote one sentence on the board. The patient is always telling you the truth. She turned to the room. Your job is to hear it before the truth becomes obvious. No one moved. Good. She pointed toward the first row. You will be tired, cold, proud, scared. You will want the problem to be simple because simple problems let you feel competent. The body does not care what you want. A candidate in the second row lifted his hand. What if command disagrees with the medical call? Mara looked at him. You make them look again. And if they still disagree? A few people shifted in their seats. Owen's eyes stayed on her. Mara rested the marker on the table. Then you decide whether your silence is part of the treatment plan. The room went very quiet. She let the words sit there, not as a lesson, as a blade. Then she opened the first case file. Not Marcus Weller's, not Caleb Ward's. A training case. Fictional on paper. Real enough where it mattered. Male 23, high exertion environment altered mental status. Normal initial pulse, sweating narrow pupils, delayed respiratory distress. Tell me what you see. Hands went up. Outside, sunlight broke over the Montana ridge. Snow still clung to the highest peaks, bright against the blue sky. The training field waited below, brutal and beautiful, ready to test anyone foolish enough to believe skill alone made them safe. Mara listened to the candidates argue through the differential. Some were wrong. Some were almost right. One quiet woman in the back row raised her hand last. Mara called on her. The candidate spoke carefully. The obvious answer may not be the dangerous one. Mara held her gaze. What do you do with that? The young woman swallowed. Keep looking. Mara nodded once. In the back of the room, Owen smiled. Mara turned back to the board, the marker still in her hand, the old tattoo dark against her forearm. For 6 years, she had tried to become ordinary. For one night, a dying soldier had made that impossible. Now she stood in front of the next generation of medics, not as a ghost, not as a legend, not as the quiet nurse someone had mistaken for background noise. She stood as the person in the room who knew exactly how expensive silence could be. And when the class bent over the case file, arguing, questioning, catching small signs before they became final ones, Mara Ellison heard something beneath their voices. Not forgiveness, not peace, something more useful. A pulse.